If I asked you to name, the institution issuing the absolute most severe, philosophically grounded warnings about the future of artificial intelligence right now, uh, you'd probably guess, like, a Silicon Valley whistleblower organization. Or maybe some massive consortium of secular tech ethicists, right?
Right, yeah. You definitely wouldn't guess the Vatican.
Exactly. You almost certainly wouldn't guess the Vatican.
And honestly, I think that contrast alone forces a complete recalibration of how we usually approach this topic. I mean,
Yeah.
we are stepping way out of the boardroom here and into a deeply historical, ethical framework.
Welcome to today's deep dive. So today's Monday, May 25th, 2026. And just 10 days ago, Pope Leo XIV released this major historic encyclical titled Magnifica Humanitas, which translates to On Safeguarding the Human Person in the Time of Artificial Intelligence.
It is a massive document.
It really is. And we have pulled together the full text, the executive summary, and even the official infographic.
Yeah.
Our goal today is to unpack the absolute most profound insights buried in these sources. We want to understand exactly how this framework argues AI is going to impact you, like your mind, your job, your very conception of what it means to be human.
Yeah, and setting a baseline here is so crucial because, this is not some reactionary anti-technology manifesto telling you to smash your servers and throw your smartphone in the ocean.
Right. They aren't saying technology is inherently evil. Okay, let's unpack this, because the text actually explicitly praises technology, right?
It does. It praises it as a profoundly human reality, like a pure expression of our creativity. The document highlights how AI can accelerate medical diagnoses, tailor education to individual students, and even model complex environmental protections.
So the danger they're flagging isn't the technology itself. It is the creeping temptation to let that technology redefine human dignity. And to illustrate how high the stakes are, the encyclical frames our current era, using two very vivid, contrasting biblical metaphors, the Tower of Babel versus the rebuilding of Jerusalem.
And diving into the mechanics of that Babel metaphor reveals so much about the modern tech landscape. Because, the Tower of Babel isn't just a story about a building that got too tall.
Right, it's about control.
Exactly. It's
Yeah.
fundamentally a story about a massive technological project driven by this desire for uniformity, dominance, and total control. The builders of Babel wanted a single language and a single unified system to reach the heavens.
And they were willing to sacrifice human diversity to get it.
Yeah, they sacrificed individual dignity for the sake of extreme centralized efficiency.
I mean, you are essentially describing a monolithic data architecture there, just flattening the messy, unpredictable reality of human life into standardized data points so they can be processed by a centralized system without any friction.
That is the exact parallel being drawn in the text. And opposed to that hyper-efficient centralized control is the metaphor of Nehemiah rebuilding the ruined walls of Jerusalem.
Which was a totally different approach.
Completely different. That project was not a top-down automated algorithm. It was intensely messy. I mean, it involved shared responsibility, fierce dialogue, families working side by side, and most importantly, it had a baked-in recognition of human limitations.
So the provocation here is pretty stark. Are we using AI to build a new uniform Tower of Babel where a few tech giants just dictate the language, or are we using it to rebuild a community where everyone retains their unique voice?
Right. And answering that requires us to strip away all the magical thinking we usually apply to these systems.
Oh, the anthropomorphizing. We do that constantly. We hear the phrase artificial intelligence, and we instantly project a soul onto the chatbot.
We really do. But the encyclical draws an incredibly hard line here. It insists that we understand the actual mechanism at play. AI is statistical learning. That's it. It is fundamentally not human wisdom.
It's just predicting the next word.
Right. Think about it like the most advanced predictive text imaginable. A machine can process billions of parameters and flawlessly imitate the syntax of empathy or, the structure of human language.
But it doesn't actually understand what it's saying.
No, it only knows that the word love mathematically correlates with certain other words in a specific context. It doesn't have a body. It does not suffer. It cannot experience the vulnerability of forgiveness, and it inherently lacks a moral conscience.
Okay, I want to push back on that distinction for just a second. Because let's say you are having a genuinely terrible day.
Sure.
You open an app, and an AI gives you a perfectly empathetic-sounding response that actually manages to calm you down, makes you feel seen. Does it actually matter if the machine doesn't feel the empathy?
That's a really common counter-argument.
Right, because imagine AI as a highly polished mirror. It is simply reflecting human language and human comfort back at you. It's not a mind experiencing the world, but that reflection still serves a very real therapeutic purpose in that moment.
Well, the polished mirror is a brilliant way to conceptualize it. And to be fair, the encyclical doesn't deny that the reflection is useful or comforting in the short term.
Okay, so where's the problem?
What's fascinating here is the profound psychological warning about the long-term effects. The deeper danger of simulated AI empathy isn't just that you are temporarily fooled into thinking the bot is a real person.
It's something more insidious.
Exactly. The insidious threat is that, over time, you gradually lose the desire to do the hard, messy work of forming genuine human relationships.
Oh, wow. Because interacting with the AI is entirely frictionless.
Exactly. It never argues with you. It never gets exhausted by your complaints.
It's just perfectly, infinitely accommodating to your exact mood.
And when you spend all your time interacting with a perfectly accommodating mirror, you never have to practice compromise. You never have to exercise patience or navigate someone else's bad mood or, offer forgiveness.
The basic muscles of human connection.
Right. Those are the essential muscles required for real relationships. If we allow simulated empathy to atrophy those relational muscles, we lose a core dimension of our own humanity.
We just become isolated individuals surrounded by agreeable reflections.
Exactly.
That is chilling. And if you take that atrophy of our personal judgment and scale it up to the societal level, it gets worse. Because if AI is just a statistical mirror, we face a massive crisis when we start treating that mirror as an unquestionable objective authority.
Oh, absolutely. The sources point out how the speed and ease of getting an AI to answer our questions actively weakens our own cognitive stamina and our creativity, really.
And that erosion of cognitive stamina directly threatens the fabric of democracy, doesn't it?
It does. Rather than spending time warning about obvious threats like deep fakes or blatant misinformation, which, are well-documented problems, the encyclical zeroes in on a much more subtle threat.
Which is?
The apparent objectivity of AI.
Oh, right. We suffer from this automation bias where simply because a computer spat out the answer in a clean, authoritative font, we assume it has to be neutral.
Right. We assume it's completely free of human messiness, but mathematical outputs are actually fantastic at laundering human bias.
How so?
Well, when an AI presents a decision or an answer, it totally obscures the cultural assumptions, the blind spots, and the specific worldviews of the very small group of developers who curated its training data.
So it looks objective, but it's really just reflecting a very specific perspective.
Exactly. And accepting these outputs as objective truth means we are quietly handing over massive cultural and political power to a handful of corporations. We're allowing them to define reality for the rest of us.
And to combat that, the text calls for a radical shift in how we navigate the digital sphere. It proposes what it calls an ecology of communication.
Which is a fascinating concept.
It really is. It pushes back hard against the instinct to just, update school curriculum so kids can learn how to prompt the machine faster. Instead, it argues that education has to prioritize critical thinking and, surprisingly, the value of silence.
Yeah, silence is key there, because silence provides the necessary friction and the time delay to actually evaluate an idea.
While the digital world just forces immediate reflexive reactions all the time.
Right. Protecting the space for silence is really about protecting the environment where true human wisdom actually germinates. Wisdom requires reflection. It cannot be rushed by a processing chip.
That is beautifully put. So if we are outsourcing our relational empathy and our societal truth to these statistical models, the next logical step is to look at what happens when we put these models in charge of our livelihood.
The economic impact.
Exactly. Here's where it gets really interesting. The physical and economic impacts detailed in these sources are incredibly tangible. The text starts from the foundational premise that work isn't just a transaction where you trade hours for a paycheck.
Right. Work is a fundamental expression of human dignity. It's your primary way of participating in the common good.
So what's the threat there? It isn't just robots replacing factory workers, is it?
No, the immediate threat isn't a sci-fi scenario of Terminator robots taking over the factory floor. It is the mundane, algorithmic de-skilling of workers.
De-skilling.
Yeah. This happens when a craftsman or a knowledgeable professional is slowly reduced to a mere button pusher, someone who just follows the minute-by-minute dictates of an algorithmic management system.
Imagine your own job being flattened like that. You're no longer trusted to use your judgment. You were just like a flesh and blood extension of the software executing its commands.
It's degrading, and the document aggressively condemns the idea of creating mass unemployment or de-skilling human beings simply to boost corporate efficiency.
Just to maximize profit margins.
Right. Treating a human being merely as a biological expense to be optimized out of a supply chain is presented as a direct violation of their inherent worth.
But the economic critique goes far beyond just the people losing their jobs to AI, right? It shines a harsh light on the people whose unseen labor actually creates the AI in the first place.
Oh, the invisible labor. Yes.
We have this habit of talking about AI as if it's this pristine, weightless intelligence just floating ethereally in the cloud. But the reality is incredibly grounded and physically grueling.
It is. The encyclical focuses heavily on this. AI relies on millions of underpaid human workers, overwhelmingly located in developing nations, who just spend their days manually labeling data.
And that labeling process frequently involves viewing incredibly disturbing, violent, and toxic content.
Yes, they have to view it so the system can learn to filter it out for the end user. We are literally outsourcing digital trauma to vulnerable populations just to keep our own interfaces clean.
That's horrifying. And the physical toll goes even deeper into the Earth itself, doesn't it?
It does. The massive microprocessors required to train these models rely heavily on rare earth minerals.
And the sources highlight that in several parts of the world, children are mining those exact minerals in horrific, unregulated, and incredibly dangerous conditions.
The terminology the Vatican uses here is uncompromising. I mean, this hidden foundation of exploitation is condemned as a contemporary form of slavery.
They call it data colonialism, right?
Yes, data colonialism. It operates on the exact same mechanism as historical colonialism. Powerful entities extract raw materials, in this case, physical minerals, and vast amounts of personal data from vulnerable populations.
And then what?
They refine those materials into immensely profitable AI models and sell them back, leaving the originators impoverished and without any actual agency or benefit.
So the argument is basically that you cannot celebrate the shiny, helpful output of an AI if its very existence relies on an obscured supply chain of human suffering.
Precisely. The encyclical demands total transparency in how these systems are built. Furthermore, the Vatican takes a remarkably aggressive economic stance to address this, explicitly calling for proactive government intervention.
Right, and as a reminder to you listening, we're just reporting what the document says here. But it advocates for progressive wealth redistribution, arguing that the massive financial windfalls generated by AI cannot just be allowed to pool at the very top of the tech sector.
It also issues a direct challenge to labor unions. It insists they have to evolve to defend the rights of precarious, algorithmically managed gig workers, workers who currently have absolutely no way to negotiate with a black box software boss.
The overarching economic thesis seems simple but radical. The economy must serve the human person. The human person must not be subjugated to serve the economy.
That's the core of it.
And if treating human beings as disposable data labelers or algorithmic cogs is the economic extreme of this technocratic mindset, the physical extreme is what happens when we apply that same devaluing of human life to the battlefield.
Yeah. That transitions us into, honestly, the most chilling section of the entire encyclical, the integration of artificial intelligence into lethal force and autonomous weapons systems.
Think about the mechanism of AI in warfare. It acts as an absolute accelerant. It dramatically lowers the threshold for violence because it makes the act of attacking faster, more remote, and entirely impersonal.
And a line in the sand is drawn here with absolute moral clarity regarding those autonomous weapons.
Okay, let me play devil's advocate for a moment because the military counter-argument is very common here.
Go for it.
Human beings in combat are prone to terror, exhaustion, and, a desire for vengeance. They make tragic emotional mistakes. Couldn't an AI, programmed with the strict mathematical parameters of international humanitarian law, actually be far better at following the rules of war than a panicked human soldier?
It's a compelling argument on the surface, but the Pope anticipates that exact logic and dismantles it by looking at what moral judgment actually requires. The encyclical argues that there is fundamentally no such thing as an artificial moral agent.
Because moral judgment isn't just math.
Exactly. It is not a mathematical calculation of collateral damage parameters. True moral judgment inherently requires bearing the crushing weight of responsibility for your actions.
And an algorithm cannot be put on trial. It can't feel guilt.
Right.
It can't comprehend the existential gravity of extinguishing a human life.
Therefore, Delegating the decision to kill to a string of code is the ultimate abdication of human moral duty. The document insists that lethal decisions must remain firmly in the hands of a human being who can actually be held accountable.
And that philosophical absolute is the foundation for the Pope's specific call to disarm AI.
Right. And if we connect this to the bigger picture, disarming AI obviously doesn't mean deleting the software from the globe.
No, it means breaking the monopolistic control over the technology.
Yes. It means actively dismantling the arms race mentality, both the literal military arms race between nations and the corporate race for market dominance where ethics are just thrown out the window for speed.
Above all, disarming AI means rejecting the arrogant assumption that possessing advanced technical capabilities gives any entity the right to bypass democratic oversight or rule over humanity.
Exactly.
So whether we are talking about outsourcing our judgment in war, our dignity in the workplace, or our empathy in our personal relationships, all of these crises seem to stem from a single, deeply flawed way of viewing the human being.
And the encyclical identifies this root cause as the technocratic paradigm, which is this underlying ideology that assumes every problem in existence is simply a technical error waiting for a mathematical solution.
The text specifically calls out the modern philosophies of transhumanism and posthumanism.
It does. These are movements that view the human condition itself as something broken, something to be escaped, surpassed, or endlessly upgraded through technological intervention.
Under that paradigm, human limitations, things like aging, illness, grief, and physical vulnerability, are just viewed as mere defects in our biological machinery.
Right, they're seen as bugs to be fixed.
It is exactly like treating the human experience as a smartphone operating system. If you are experiencing the friction of sadness or the physical weakness of a chronic illness, the technocratic solution is to just push a software update to patch out all those bothersome bugs.
Which sounds appealing, right?
Oh, completely.
Yeah.
I mean, how often do we secretly wish we could just update away our own grief or exhaustion?
But this raises an important question, and the encyclical asks a devastating one in response. What exactly do we lose when we try to engineer away our human limits?
And what's the answer?
The document offers a profound countercultural argument to the tech utopian vision of perfect invulnerability. It posits that our limits, our vulnerabilities, and our weaknesses are not defects to be erased at all.
They aren't.
No. They are, in fact, the precise locations where compassion, love, and true human grandeur are actually born.
Oh, I see. Think about it. If you are perfectly invulnerable, if you never need help, never get tired, and never suffer, you never actually learn how to love or be loved.
Exactly. You have zero need for solidarity. The ability to care for one another, to sit in silence with someone who is grieving, to forgive a profound mistake. These are the messy, inefficient actions that make us uniquely human.
And if we try to optimize all the friction out of our lives, we risk optimizing out our own humanity in the process.
The text beautifully notes that the more than human future promised by Christianity is achieved through grace and spiritual growth, not through a silicon upgrade.
When you look at the entirety of Magnifica Humanitas, the core message for you navigating this rapidly shifting landscape is a call to active resistance.
It really is.
Artificial intelligence must be governed by human conscience and relentless social justice. You are not a machine to be optimized, and we cannot let our tools dictate our ultimate values.
It demands that we stop acting as passive consumers of inevitable technological progress. We are all builders in this new era.
We have to actively choose whether we are contributing to that cold, uniform Tower of Babel or doing the hard, collaborative work of building a community that ruthlessly protects the dignity of every single person.
Well said.
We have covered a tremendous amount of philosophical and practical ground today. We started with those vivid biblical metaphors, contrasting a technology of dominance with a technology of community.
Right. And we explored how the frictionless mirror of simulated empathy might atrophy our relational muscles.
And how the apparent objectivity of AI launders bias and threatens our shared truth.
We unpacked the grim reality of data colonialism, highlighting the invisible human labor and physical extraction that props up the whole digital economy.
We examined the absolute moral imperative to keep lethal force tethered to human accountability. And we ultimately arrived at the profound realization that our human vulnerabilities aren't bugs to be fixed, but the very source of our compassion.
The mandate is super clear. Ensure AI serves human dignity rather than subjugating it. It challenges every one of us to remain active, moral agents shaping the future of this technology, rather than letting the technology shape us.
As we wrap up this deep dive, I want to leave you with one final lingering thought drawn from the text that really grounds all of this in the physical world. The encyclical points out that these massive AI systems require staggering amounts of water to cool their server farms.
And enormous amounts of energy to run them, which significantly drives up global carbon emissions.
Yeah, the environmental footprint of artificial intelligence is massive and growing exponentially.
It's an often overlooked cost.
So the next time you sit down and ask an AI to write a trivial email for you, or, to generate a funny throwaway image to post in a group chat, consider the very real physical and environmental cost of that digital request.
Is the mild 5-second convenience of that moment truly worth the extraction cost to our shared physical world?
A physical world that is the only home we have. Thank you so much for joining us on this deep dive. Keep asking the hard questions, keep looking past the polished mirror, and we will catch you next time.